Okay, House of Payne fans, Season 14, Episode 6, House of Bad Neighbors. I gotta say, this episode was a doozy. And I know that people have been anticipating this because I've been looking at the comments on, what was the last House of Payne video I did? The sneak peek where we got those photos of Laura looking angry at Calvin. I'm waiting on your episode review. A few people messaged me on Instagram. Where is it? I had to take my time with this one because for the first time since this reboot came on BET, when did the reboot start? Was it like 2019 or was it early 2020? I think it was 2019. I could be wrong, but I have over a page and a half of notes, which you're probably like, Jeremy, what's the big deal? Typically with House of Payne, I do no more than half a page of notes. I had to pay attention to everything in this episode because, strangely enough, and I mean this in a very, very good way, both storylines, the HOA stuff with Mrs. Wellington, as well as the Laura stuff, as well as Miranda, it all flowed together well. This was a solid episode. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. Now, Laura is on the rampage again. And man, there's just so much to dissect here. I don't even know where to start. I want to try to talk about this episode in order. You know how typically I'm like, okay, I'll talk about the B storyline that nobody cares about first and get that out of the way. And then I'll devote the back half of the video to the, piece that is resistance. I freaking messed up that saying. My bad. I'm not having a stroke, I promised. But, I just watched Beyond the Gates. Bill just had a mini stroke. It was all right. So before we go into it, make sure you take a moment to like and subscribe. Follow me on social media. Links are in the description below. Hit the bell icon and select all. That way you don't miss out whenever I post content on the channel. And let's get into it. So we start off with, this scene was actually the sneak peek that was released before the episode dropped. If you're probably wondering, Jeremy, why didn't you do a video on the sneak peek? If the sneak peek is solely based on the plot point of the episode that I know people don't give a flying F about, I'm not going to do a video on it. Clearly, any sort of clip in relation to Miranda, Laura, or Calvin, I'm going to do a clip on that. A sneak peek review. But in terms of this flyer stuff, I knew it wouldn't do anything. So CJ comes over to show Curtis and Ella flyers that are anti-glow. This Mrs. Wellington is, calling her out for being a bad, president, and also attending Bible study at the residence that has the food truck that leaks oil everywhere. Basically calling out the Paynes for being bad neighbors. Glow comes in upset about the flyers as well, and they join forces to deal with Wellington, not just to absolve Glow of these harsh accusations, but also to show that the Paynes, are, well respected in the community. But I like how they make a note of how, you got to think about most of the community that knows the Paynes well, for the most part, they retired or they moved away. Some have passed on. So you have a lot of new faces here who might not know about the Paynes and all they do or have done for the community. And on top of that, Curtis is mad that he got called out for his food truck. And from there, he calls out Wellington being a hypocrite, considering that she is a frequent customer of the food truck parked right outside. So how dare she use that to slander, our good name to get rid of Glow. Even though Ella needed to chill for a minute because of the fact that she tried to blame the food truck and whatnot for the slander, as opposed to the Bible study group being held at their house where Wellington saw Glow in the first place. So yeah, Ella, I'm not blaming you because Wellington is the one who's stirred the pot, but don't point the finger at Curtis when the Bible study was what got this whole thing started in the first place. I know it sounded like I contradicted myself there, but you know what I mean. But I actually love this storyline, especially how CJ stepped up to help out with the whole situation. about their own flyers, because the whole thing is like, okay, we gotta fight fire with fire here. So from there, you know what? Actually, let's talk about towards the end of the episode, because they're in the living room now working on the flyer and they're hyping up the Paynes, and they actually do some good continuity here. I forgot to write down the dude's name. Wasn't it Dante? Because they mention all the things that, Curtis has done for the community in terms of, his career as firefighter and fire chief, as well as, the current chief of the station being a relative, someone who Curtis took under his wing, as well as his family. And then from there, mentioning Dante, right? The foster kid from the original series, and what he's up to now. And also, of course, what Ella does down at the help center. And then even Glow was like, oh, wow, I didn't know you all did all these things. That's amazing. Almost makes me honored to know you, Curtis. So it was great just seeing everything come together. And the biggest piece of relative evidence here that Wellington isn't the right person for the job, they mention how Wellington is kind of stuck up. She keeps to herself and doesn't really know the community. And ironically enough, Glow, throws shade by saying how, oh yeah, she's going door to door talking about she has freshly baked cookies when they're store-bought cookies from the supermarket. And they plan on holding an event, I think in the front yard. Essentially, hey, Unc, do you think you can start up the fryers and get some of that famous barbecue to introduce the Paynes to the new neighbors? Essentially a mini block party, if you will, in order to show that, hey, these flyers are trash. We aren't who Wellington says we are, and get to know us, the Paynes, up close and personal. So CJ's like, well, my work is done. And I actually liked it. He played a good role in pointing Glow, his aunt and uncle, in the right direction to turn the ship around. So I'm actually intrigued. Now, I want to talk about Wellington coming over to the house. I mean, technically I can. I'll skip over the Miranda stuff. So long story short, Ms. Wellington comes over with those freshly baked cookies, and she's trying to promote herself to, Janine and her family in regards to how the current HOA president is doing a lousy job and how she'll be better. And Miranda decides to dip, which again, I will talk about Miranda momentarily, but I want to get the Wellington stuff out of the way first. And Malik is eyeballing the cookies, but Janine's like, don't you want any of those cookies? So that actually leads to something interesting, because Wellington is, confident. Oh, so I didn't know there was an election coming up. Did Glow do something wrong? Is she stepping down? Oh no, I'm going to knock her out of office. And they're like, oh snap, okay, she confident. So this goes on and on about how, Glow is awful and how she's the better woman for the job. And the moment CJ comes through the door, he immediately knows, yeah, this is the ops right here. Wait, what? So he pretty much goes in there, hands a couple of flyers around, and it's on like, wait, okay, these are the flyers that have been handed around the neighborhood, okay? And you're talking about Curtis and Ella Payne, right? Yeah, that's our aunt and uncle. And then Wellington's like, oh, okay. Well, if it's a war you want, it's a war you're going to get. And from there, she gets kicked out of the house, and she's like, oh, I've been kicked out of nicer places. And the funniest part is, and this is my favorite part of the episode, I know Jasmine had her one-liners when she was eavesdropping on Miranda and Janine. But when Malik snatched up all those cookies like the Cookie Monster, so Wellington would go out the door with an empty tray, I just laughed so hard. It was ridiculous, but I couldn't help but laugh at it. So the thing about it is, Wellington being in their home, dogging on Glow, this was a prime example of what Glow was saying. Wellington wants to take me out of the presidential position, but she doesn't even know the neighborhood. And this was a prime example, because she introduced herself as, hey, Mrs. Payne talking to Janine. I'm your neighbor, and I just thought I'd bring by some fresh cookies and give you some information about the upcoming HOA election. So yeah, this was pretty much confirmation that she doesn't know the neighborhood as well as she's trying to promote herself as a friendly face to be the president of HOA. No, if you knew those neighbors, you would know, hey, they're the ops. I need to stay away. But the funny part to follow that up is she slams the door and Janine's like, did she just slam my door? And Janine booked it out there, to go after her. So the HOA storyline, I think, is pretty cool. And I'm actually looking forward to see where it's going to go later on down the line. So with that being said, we need to talk about the beast that is Laura, because everything else remaining to discuss in this episode is in relation to what goes down at the loft, the fallout where Miranda tells Janine about what's going on, and Calvin and Laura going at it again. So, funny enough, the episode or the scene with these two starts out pretty great. Calvin sneaks a kiss behind Laura. She's smiling. Everybody's smiling. Christian's like, finishing up breakfast. Oh, son, how's breakfast? It was great. Ah, so somebody's a fan of your cooking. I wouldn't go that far, Calvin. It was just cereal. Well, it was great. Look, I need to say this. Christian is one of my favorite young actors on these shows because you can tell his actor is just excited to be there and just reads every line with enthusiasm or the correct emotion that he needs to present in the scene. So he was eating those non-Applejack cereal. He was eating that like it was, his reaction to it was like Tony the Tiger. They're great. It was a cute scene. I like that. Now, while Christian, I think, goes to the back, the bedroom or whatever, probably to get his stuff, Calvin says, hey babe, please stay in a good mood. And as soon as he said that, Laura's like, what, Calvin? Well, actually, Miranda is coming to get Christian. Okay, so we're just going to do the usual where she, stays downstairs and you bring him down and, they go home. Actually, she wants to come upstairs. What? Hey, Miranda wants to talk to you. That's it. She just wants to come up here and talk to you. This is where the episode starts to take a turn. She makes it clear that while she cannot control who goes in and out of Miss Ella's home, she lives at the condo, meaning that she can control who comes in and out of here. And that chick ain't coming up in here. So it turns out Christian comes out of the back and then he doesn't fully understand what's going on, but he mimics what Laura said about, oh, that chick ain't coming up in here. And then Calvin's like, oh, no, nothing's going on. We got to go, Christian. So that's when, he takes his son and dips. So I'm thinking, and remember, this when I, saw the episode Wednesday night, or actually it was Thursday morning. And I'm like, normal, huh? Because it didn't click. It did not click until we get the follow-up scene where Miranda goes over to Janine's house to talk about it. Because I'm like, all right. Because at the moment, I should have known, wait a minute, this isn't normal. Think of how many times Miranda randomly comes up to the condo to pick up, Christian or Junior or both, whatever. So we go over to Janine and Jasmine, who are meal prepping, and Malik scoffs at it. And they mention like, wait, I thought you were joining us on the health kick. That fried food's going to catch up to you. Obviously, it already has. And look, if you know me, I got some meat on my bones as well, so I can say it. And it's ironic because wasn't it just a few episodes ago where Malik was complaining about, the dad bod he has and trying to lose weight, and he was actually meal prepping in that by the end of the episode. But I guess he fell off the train. But I do like the continuity because they did bring up like, hey, I thought you were joining us on the, meal prep thing. But hey, he's not about that life. Now, and they mentioned like, wait, what about, don't you think it'll be easier for you to meal prep and take your lunch to work as opposed to finding lunch every day? Well, yeah, I use that as my break from the office. Yeah, fair enough. So Miranda actually comes in and she's upset about Laura. And Malik is like, Laura, huh? You know what? I actually kind of like her. And the way all three of them gave him a death stare. I felt two ways about this. Number one, it kind of shows that, yeah, Laura is semi-right about how the family turns against her, because for all she knows, there might be a couple of Maliks in the family who actually don't mind her, but they have to turn against her because the majority rules. But on the other hand, it's like, Malik, why didn't you read the room? Like, for real. You dissed the meal prepping, just go about your day. But yeah, and it's also the fact that, well, Malik, you weren't there when Laura turned the house down in House of Love. So obviously you would be indifferent towards Laura, because I think the one and only time I even recall Malik having a quote unquote episode with Laura was also with Lisa. Wasn't it the episode? I think CJ had a drone and I think Laura was the one that broke it or something. Yeah, I think that was their only episode together. But yeah, so the side-eye thing happened. Malik goes into the living room to prep for a meeting, and that's about it. Now, they pretty much want Jasmine to stay out of grown folks' business, but I mean, she's technically an adult, but at the same time, you know how it is. Even if you're like in your 20s or 30s, like the quote-unquote grown folks of the family want to keep their business private. But Jasmine, being Jasmine, throws her quips in there as Miranda's describing what's going on. So she was going to go talk to Laura because, believe it or not, she was actually going to swallow her pride and apologize to Laura. Now, for what exactly, I don't know. But by this point in the season, we've already established that Laura doesn't like opposition. You're either in agreement with her. She's really Karen from Sisters, in the fact that you're either in support of her stance on something or a decision she made. But if you show any sort of, I don't know, disagreement or even want to give advice like, hey, I see what you mean, but I don't know if that was the right. You're op. So basically you have to bend down and kiss the ring to appease her. But she was only going to do this for the sake of the co-parenting of the kids. Now, this whole downstairs pickup thing is a recent change, because Janine's like, wait, what? Yeah, Laura has been so pissed that she won't even let me up in the condo anymore. You mean the place where your son stays? The place where my son stays. Side note, there are a lot of people on Twitter and whatnot like, wait, isn't that Miranda's condo? Look, yes, she did buy it and everything in the OG series, but it was established early in the reboot that post-divorce, Calvin got the condo. So it is no longer Miranda's condo. I just want to put that out there. So people are like, Laura got some nerves. This is Miranda's. No. It doesn't matter. If Calvin bought a house pre-marriage, then he got married to Miranda, and there was no prenup or whatever, and then they got a divorce, and Miranda got the house in the divorce, it doesn't matter if Calvin bought the house. It is no longer his house, it's Miranda's. So please, I know a lot of people don't like Laura, but let's just not ignore the fact that the condo is not Miranda's condo, okay? Can we just, it's not hers anymore. So what made her upset was the fact that she brings up Christian is now at that age where he mimics what he hears. And on the way home, he said, don't have that chick in my house, Calvin. And now Miranda's like, okay. So it's one thing for her to say that, but now she's saying that in the presence of my son, or at least where he can hear it. So she waited a while downstairs thinking that, Calvin would eventually contact her to let her know, hey, Laura said it's cool to come up and talk. But apparently that never happened. What happened was that Calvin eventually came downstairs. And here's my guess, given that she said she waited a while, and in the scene earlier in the episode when Calvin was telling Laura about it, but then when she blew up, he's like, okay, we got to go. I'm thinking that he purposefully waited for Miranda to already be there. And that goes back to him saying, please stay in a good mood. So yeah, it didn't end well. So after the fact, That's when Miss Wellington comes in. But I will say Jasmine actually got in a slick jab because of the fact that Calvin has a type, huh? Or Calvin sure knows how to pick him. He picked me. Oops, that's not what I meant. Or you know what I mean. So even though Jasmine had a mouth on her, like her one-liners are funny, but other times it's like, come on, do you really need to say? Do you really have to have a comeback for everything? But it is consistent with her character. It does come across as annoying sometimes, even though she can be funny at times. But it's like, come on now. But then again, Janine, I don't see how you can like try to stop her because she's literally a mini you. So that leads to Miss Wellington coming over, but I already talked about that. So now we need to get back to the condo. Calvin is pretty upset. He's just watching TV. And Laura is annoyed that he doesn't want to talk. And Calvin, and the thing about this, Calvin was calm. I want you to pay attention. And this is why this video took so long, because I needed to take notes on everything. Because sometimes when I do my notes, and then I look at clips from like a House of Payne and Assisted Living clips. There are a couple of Instagram pages that like post a full episode in segments on Instagram. And they're like, I watch a clip and like, dang it, I missed the way this person responded to this line or whatever. So that's why I took my time watching this episode to make sure I didn't miss anything. But then again, by the time I finish this review and upload it, I'm pretty sure I would have missed something. But hey, I did my best and I'm pretty confident I got everything down. Calvin is calm through this entire encounter. And he blatantly says, Laura, I don't know. Every time we talk, it ends up turning into an argument. And then she rebuts, or her rebuttal is, well, Calvin, that's because you never see things from my side or my perspective. On some level, I do agree with this. I think back to the episode last season about the whole Houston, where Tracy was going to take Junior to Houston, and Laura was like, well, I mean, that is Tracy is his mom. Is that really a bad thing? And immediately Calvin shut it down and just went running to Miranda. So there is some truth in what she's saying. And there are other examples as well. She's right. However, her point doesn't negate what Calvin said as correct, because as he predicted, this conversation doesn't just turn into an argument. It's Laura putting her foot down and storming out of the room. Because of the fact that Calvin makes a solid point. Look, your beef with Miranda ain't got nothing to do with Christian. It's like, I love your son. I love him. And you know that. She knows that. He knows that. I can't lie. I feel like saying you love Christian is one thing. On some level, I believe that. To some extent, I believe that. However, I feel by having, and I'm not saying people in a co-parenting situation won't have disagreements or whatnot, but I think holding a beef, grudge, or just downright disdain towards the mother of Christian, I feel like that shows that you don't love him as much as you say you do. Because I feel like if you love that boy, you would, quote unquote, let go of the beef or whatever and coexist for the sake of co-parenting peacefully. She straight up says, I don't have to be cool with her. No. What you're about to be his future stepmom. I just want you two to be civil. Is my home too. I want you to be civil in my home. Oh, well, you don't have to worry about that, Calvin. I can be civil. But what I do know is her stank ass ain't coming up in here. And she storms off. Calvin kept the conversation at like a 3. But out of nowhere, she jumped it up to a 15. This is exactly what happened when Laura was over at the house with Ella and Curtis. It was a conversation that was at a low temperature. But who was the one that escalated the situation by getting loud and storming out? Laura. The same damn thing happened here. That evil temper of hers came out. That evil temper of hers was on full display. So then we fast forward to the end of the episode, and Calvin is choosing to sleep on the couch. Laura comes out of the room wearing her PJs, and she's like, Calvin, you really not coming to bed? And he's faking being asleep. So then she just looks and then decides to go back into the room. And as soon as she does, Calvin opens his eyes, and he has that I'm just through. He has that I'm done, I'm through with this look on his face, because the truth be told, put aside his love for Miranda, the confliction of, oh, I love Laura, but I still love Miranda too. I think that he's coming to the realization that everything his family has been saying is fact about Laura. And he's going to have to put the well-being of his son in perspective here, because if Laura can't get along with the mother of Christian, that's going to cause even more friction down the line. I mean, this whole pickup in the lobby thing, Miranda not being able to come up, that's going to be a big deal. But then again, you got to look at all these situations where how many people have said, well, when I was growing up, my parents didn't exchange in the McDonald's parking lot. I don't know. So Calvin is coming to the realization Laura is a piece of work. And she really is. She really is. But with that being said, that is, everything I have to say about this episode. This review is longer than the episode itself, but I hope it was worth the wait. And yes, I do have follow-up videos coming up over the weekend, but man, this is getting intense. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like and subscribe, and I'll catch you all in the next video.